Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for the second ever FRM Solutions webinar. I am Cassidy Ford, and I will be the host today. But before we get started, I wanted to cede the floor for just a moment to Stan Friedman, who many of you will know and is really the heart and soul of our team. Stan is our president, and he wanted to just share a few words with you before we get started. So Stan, take it away.
Hey, Cassidy, just want to take a minute at the front of today's webinar to thank everybody for participating in today's program, and to thank you, Cassidy, Brian Poff, and Danny for putting this together and making these webinars available for our clients. We're going to continue to do these on a bi-weekly basis between now and the end of this year, with the ultimate goal of pushing out a webinar once a week in 2020, and some topics on a go-forward basis will be franchise development, franchise information manager, how to better utilize dashboards and views, and support webinars with just deeper engagement in mind is where we're going with these, and hope that you'll continue to find value in them. Share back with us what you like or what you wish we would do more or less of in the production of these webinars. And until I catch up with you along the way, I'm going to back out now and let Cassidy get this show on the road. Thanks, everybody, for being here, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Stan. And like he said, we are very excited and are very much looking forward to some of the new developments that are coming over the next year. And one of the reasons why we wanted to start engaging in these webinars is that we want to hear from you. We want to be able to provide you with a new level of support and engage just in a different way. So we're glad that you joined today. We are diving headfirst into a look at the brand new Project Planner 2.0. Many of you are already fluent Project Planner users, and some of this is just going to look a little bit new to you with the new features. But some of you, haven't kind of subscribed to this yet, and that's totally fine because we're going to have a little bit of something for everybody. The first thing that we're going to look at is a quick overview of Project Planner 2.0 and its new features. And then we're going to do with the whole team here just a little bit of a high-level training session to look at how you get started creating templates and applying checklists with Project Planner. The biggest news of the day is that we are opening up Project Planner 2.0 to everyone to try through the end of the year. And that's free of cost. We just want to make that available to you if you've not used it before, that you have the ability to kind of go and play around with it. If you haven't done that yet, if you've not had the opportunity to do that, now is the time to take advantage of that free access. So let's just jump in. And again, for those of you just starting out, just here's some quick background. Project Planner is really the FRM project management tool, and it is integrated into both FIM, which is our Franchise Information Manager, and your franchisee-facing gateway. So there's two pieces of it, an internal piece and an external piece, and it enables you to manage any kind of project. We used to call this store opener, and then found over time that most of you were not using this just to track store opening projects. You're using it for resales, remediation, training and onboarding, site selection, all sorts of things. So now you can manage any kind of project internally and externally through the use of task lists and Gantt charts. Now, I mentioned Franchisee Gateway, and that is the place where franchisees are able to interact with your brand through a gateway concept. It is a central location for you guys, you franchisors, to keep franchisees informed. And in addition to Project Planner, that tool is obviously in Franchisee Gateway, but franchisees can also connect with each other. They can access documents through a SharePoint document library and, like I said, manage their projects there. What you have in front of you is really a starting place that you will have known. There are a lot of dashboards as part of what are out of the box with FRM, and The dashboards are something that you can customize. That if you don't know, we can kind of train you how to do that. There's a video on our YouTube channel teaching you how to create dashboards and views. So I just wanted to start with the project planner dashboard. I log in at the beginning of the day, and I can view all of my projects. And this is something, the projects we call actually checklists. And you can access all of your checklists here in the main drop-down menu. Here's your pipeline of all of your checklists. I want to look at a particular project that I have working. I'll click on this. This is my morning routine, which is a little bit silly, but everyone's familiar with what that looks like. On the left, you have your task list, and that generally looks the same, but there's some new columns there that we're going to go through. On the right is the Gantt chart. Also, just a few little changes that you're going to notice as we look at this. At the top, immediately, you're going to notice that there are some new task items, action items that weren't there before. So you can undo and redo a task or an action item that you have just performed. Then inserting a task above or below another task, which, by the way, a task is also technically called a checklist item. So if you see that anywhere, a checklist item is just a task. A task is just a more familiar term for that. These buttons right here are going to be able to help you more quickly manage the task, the order of tasks. Right here, you can change the order, and those are something that we've added. A lot of this is coming based on client feedback. You guys have kind of let us know that you wanted to streamline things a bit. One of the things that we've talked to you about is this idea of phased projects. So I want to talk about that in just a moment, but this right here, we have now created a feature where you can have main tasks and subtasks. So we'll talk about that, but that's what this is for. You can indent or unindent a task to make it a subtask or leave it a main task. And then all of these action items here, some are the same, some are a little bit different, but this is designed to help you view data. Everybody wants to see it in a little bit of a different way. So that's what this is designed for, is to help you consume that information in the way that's going to make the most sense to you. All of these these stages here for those tasks, those have not changed. They are that same green, yellow, blue system for open, in progress, and closed. But the real fun stuff starts happening here when we are looking at our task list and the columns in our task list. You still have your start and end dates and your duration, but now you see you can actually track the percentage of complete percentage of each of those tasks. And on the Gantt chart, notice that there is a shaded bar that's going to indicate how far along in that task you are at any given point. Then also there is a dependencies column here that you may not have seen before. Obviously, dependencies has always been a feature that we have had, but and you've always been able to have multiple dependencies. Now you can have offset dependencies, whether something is 5 days in the future or a 5-day overlap with a task. You're now able to have that overlap, have that offset in the future or in the past. That main task and subtask concept takes us from a place previously where all of your tasks and all of your project steps had to happen sequentially, where one step, let's say it is, hit snooze. Hit snooze had to be completed before you hit snooze again, or, whatever that may be. You had to put your feet on the ground before you could set the dogs on the ground. But now you see that you can actually do both of those at the same time. Good luck, because you're going to be pretty sleepy, but you can do those at the same time if you want. So now, instead of those sequential tasks, you have that ability to have the parent task and the subtask, and those more complex projects are going to be a lot easier for you. In the real world, maybe your real estate team needs to complete FAs before permitting and construction can start, or maybe there is a piece of your department, you have a department on your team that is going to have to sign off on something before it can proceed to the next phase. All of that is now possible, and moving from step to step and restricting or opening up the process. I'll scroll back over here for just a second, because this is something that you guys have been asking for quite a while. We have taken these assignees, and now you can see you have the ability to assign multiple people to a task, which is really exciting because obviously you're going to have a lot of people who are involved in the day-to-day interaction with this project. And that also means that if you have a franchisee who is interacting with this, or multiple franchisees on the other end, maybe they have a construction manager, whoever it may be, you can assign all of them to a particular task and they'll be able to see what's going on. This can be either a user or a contact. Like I said, Danny Jackson and Cassidy Ford, both of those are corporate users. But if I came down to Eduardo and Diana, they are contacts because they are franchisees that are helping to manage this project. That is something that kind of speaks to the franchisee gateway. And we'll move on to that in just a moment. The franchisee gateway, all of this information in one way or the other is going to be showing up for the franchisee or whoever has that login for that location to come and view and manage what they need to manage. How does that work? You know, some of those settings that I want to set for each of these tasks. I want to open up this paperclip here, so we'll see what this is all about. This is something that you've had the capability of doing in the past, and I want to make sure that you guys are actually using all of the bits and pieces of this because it's pretty cool. There's a lot of best practices on how you can communicate with your team or how you can communicate with your franchisee. I'll start here in the notes section. You're in a checklist item or task right now in the detail part of it. This is where you'd want to communicate with your franchisee. In real time, you can enter a note here and they're going to be able to see it. You can make an attachment, either an attachment or a zip folder with multiple attachments up to 128 megabytes. And that is all going to take place here. To go back for just a moment, if you, as a best practice, want to communicate with your team, there are two ways that you would want to do that. If I scroll down to below my checklist, when I am in that overall view, there's a notes section here where you can leave notes that your franchisee will not see, but the rest of your team will, and you can upload documents there and everything. Any kind of documents that are uploaded for the project at the end is going to be deactivated. As long as you don't delete that project for whatever reason, we always encourage people to never delete things, to always just deactivate them, to keep a record of those things. All of that is always going to be stored with that project forever. The last way to communicate with your team is something that you're all familiar with, which is going to just be that activity feed in a location record that sits inside of FIM or Franchise Information Manager. So that being said, let's move on to the gateway. We're talking about the ways that you can communicate with your franchisee. How do you or how do they interact with this platform? Right now, this is a really basic, this is our demo environment. This is what a basic franchisee gateway would look like. Every brand is going to have something a little bit different. It's going to be organized different. You guys would have full freedom to design this the way that you want it to look. It's based in SharePoint, therefore it's pretty easy. People are familiar with kind of how to work with that. But the large part of this, obviously you can do so many things here, but I wanted to show you Project Planner. If I am a franchisee, you can see that I'm logged in as Diana. If I'm a franchisee and I need to come and look at my projects, just click here on Project Planner. and it'll bring up a list of any of the projects that I have going on right now as a franchisee. I see this list, and if I'm a multi-unit owner and I have projects going on across the board, it'll show up for each of my units. And then also it will indicate whether those are closed or open. I'll click on a particular location. It's going to load, and you'll notice one thing right off the bat that is very different, and this is the Gantt chart view for the franchisee. This is a really great addition in that it's going to enhance the experience that the franchisee has in the gateway to manage their project. We want to make this as easy as possible for them to be able to encourage adoption and engagement. I'll click on this and note that I, as a franchisee, cannot change anything on the Gantt chart. And that is so that you can maintain control of the process and the timeline and be able to guide this project. So that is brand new. Down here, the task list, you'll notice some of these are in red. The same thing happens, you would have seen this here. These are all complete, so those don't matter, but these are in progress and they're past due, so they turn red. You're also going to see that on the task list that these have turned red because they're past due. This is meant to be another simple view for them. This has not changed because it works very well. I, as Diana, can come and mark my task open, closed, or in progress. And I can see the whole pipeline of the whole project. You have the ability on the back end to hide a certain task from the gateway. If that's an internal task and they don't need to see it, you can hide that from the gateway. Also, this Gantt chart can be hidden from the gateway. Just keep in mind that if you hide it, it's going to be hidden for everyone across the whole system, not just per project. Couple of other things that are new for this Project Planner 2.0 launch is that you are going to see some notifications or some messages pop up for the users of the gateway. Say if they try to move on to a task and an attachment hasn't been approved, or let's say that there's a dependency and it is a previous task has not been completed yet, so they can't mark the other task as closed. They're going to have little messages that pop up here to indicate to them why they are not able to take that action and close out that task. Again, you see the paperclip here where I'm talking about that ability to communicate with the franchisee, again, in real time. They can leave you a note, they can attach something. As I said, maybe an executed lease, maybe it's a permit or a certificate that they have received. All of that can be submitted here. The last thing that I wanted to mention, we were talking about those messages that popped up, notifications that go out. There are 2 out-of-the-box notifications, and I have a description of those in the training materials that you can find online on our support page if you want to find out more information about those 2 email notifications that go out and how to use them. So that's really Franchisee Gateway. Those are part and parcel. They go hand in hand and really are connected to each other. I have probably said this, you've heard me say this before, that FIM, our Franchise Information Manager, is the hub of what we do for our operational pieces of our platform. And if you're not using FIM, you would want to start using that so that you can engage with Project Planner and with Franchisee Gateway. And those are just spokes off of that hub. I could spend, a full hour showing you how to manage these checklists, but I want to hand it off to Danny and Brian to show you some of the ways to get started setting up those templates and checklists. Just a reminder, after this webinar, you will have the opportunity to schedule a premier one-on-one training session where we can dive much deeper into this. We're actually showing you a lot of this today. So there's more detail to it, but we can dive into that a little bit deeper. And then if you are not currently using this as part of your entire toolbox, contact me, contact our support team, ping us on our chat on the website, and we definitely want to hear from you, and we can talk and show you a little bit more about what this is all about. So, Danny, I mentioned both a checklist and a checklist template, and there's a difference there. Now, can you tell us a little bit more about that difference and how we get started using a template?
Yeah, so thanks, Cassidy. The a checklist template is a beginning stage of something that's going to be used over and over again, whereas a checklist is tied to a specific location but built from a template.
Okay, that's perfect. If I'm gonna start with a template, how do I do that? How do I get started building that template?
Yeah, so what we'll do is we will navigate to the project planner module, and then we will choose checklists. And then from here, you can hit the new button. The first thing we're going to do is name our checklist template. Now, one of the things when you're doing this is, we try to advise people to not use the name checklist or template in the name. It just causes confusion later on. So I'm just going to call this nightly routine. Then the next thing that you'll do is you see this field here that says is template. It is a required field. You can see that by the red asterisk. You're going to choose or change this to yes. At this point, you can hit save. Now you have a checklist template built. The next thing that we will need to do is start adding tasks. So the first thing I'm going to do is click right here on the first row. I'm just going to add a few tasks. Take a shower, put on pajamas, and you can see as I'm doing this is really easy to do. And maybe set my alarm clock. Okay, now I've added a few tasks to my checklist template. So the next thing I'd like to show is how you can make a task a subtask. So for instance, if I wanted put on pajamas to be a subtask of take a shower, then all I need to do is indent the task. And now you can see we have a negative sign here where you can collapse or expand this list of tasks. All right, next thing we're going to show is how you can set the start and the end dates. You can do that right here just by clicking in this field, and you get this calendar widget that pops up, and we can change the dates. As you can see, the dates of the subtask also changed, but the dates below, or the tasks below, that aren't part of the parent task did not change. You can also set durations. Durations are set just like dates. You can choose this field and put a value in here. The other thing that you can do is set milestones. Milestones can be set in two different places, either by this column right here, or you can hit the pencil next to the task and also choose the button here for this is a milestone, and then just save. The next thing I'd like to show is how you can assign a task. You will go back to the pencil, and you have a tab that says assignments. Tasks can be assigned to a user, a contact, and a role. You can assign tasks to many users, many contacts, or a role. I'm going to show assigning this to a user. I will just pick myself. And that's it. I'm going to hit the save button, and now within our chart here, you can see that I am assigned to this task. If you have many assignees, you will also see the other assignees in this cell. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to show is how you can do dependencies. There is two ways that you can do this, either by clicking within a cell under this dependencies column or you can do it within the Gantt chart. As you can see, the blue bubbles that come up as you hover over a task is what you use to draw dependencies. So going back to the first way, I can just type in here the dependency that I would like to create.
So, Danny, you had up just a second ago something that looked like a window pane. It was a task detail. Can you click on that and show us a little bit of some of the things, some of the settings that you can set on that task detail pane?
Absolutely. So again, in order to navigate to the task detail pane, you will hit the pencil. This is the task details. So earlier when I was showing, you can set the start date and the end date. You can set the little checkbox if it's a milestone. You can set the duration, the percentage. You can change the status of that task to open, in progress, or closed.
So basically, Danny, what you're saying is that you can either use the cells and the columns in the task list to change this information, or I can come into an individual task and in this kind of detailed way, change all of the information, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So what about the other tabs up there? It says assignments and notifications and gateway.
Yeah, so we showed earlier how you can assign a task to either a user, a contact, a role, and it's just showing my name here because I have previously used myself as an assignment. So this is just a recently used list that it'll define there. Notifications, there are some out-of-the-box notifications that go out around when an item is closed, when an item is overdue. This is the list of people or users and contacts that you would like to also get those notifications. The next tab is Gateway.
Danny, on Gateway, I think I showed just a little bit earlier about how there are some fun things that you can do to communicate with your franchisee, about providing with them with some additional resources where you can link to another website or a location of a file. And then I think we did also talk about this attachment required, where you can click that box right there and then come in later once you've received the file and just click that second box to note that the file has been approved. So just some cool things that you can do right there in the gateway too. Okay, so Danny, show me now. You've created the template. So, you know, there's all these templates that we have. How do I take that template and make a checklist for a specific location?
Okay, let me show you how you can make a checklist for a specific location. So I'll first start with showing you these are the active checklists. These are the ones that have already been assigned to a location. You can see that by looking at this location column. In order to see the templates that we've created, you can change the view to templates, and therefore you can see the one that I just created called nightly routine. So this is just a view selector, so you can move this around and see the different checklists or templates or even open checklists by location. So in order to apply this checklist template that we just created to a location, we will first pull up a location. So I'm going to navigate over to the FRM module and then click locations. For this demo, I'm just going to use location 16. Now that we're on the location record, there is a button on this toolbar that says Apply Checklist. So we're going to click Apply Checklist. You're going to get a dialog that pops up that allows you to choose the checklist template that you want to apply to this location. We're going to hit the lookup button. And now we can choose the nightly routine checklist template and hit the add button. Next thing we're going to do is choose Next. Now on this part of the process, you get to select a start date. For this demo, I'm just going to choose today. The baseline task is a list of all of the tasks that are within your checklist template. You can either set these on the first one, or even in the middle, or on the last one. What's going to happen is the dates will adjust accordingly.
So Danny, what you just explained is that you are going to have the ability to choose your baseline task. So for instance, if you know that your grand opening needs to be on a certain day, you can set the baseline task to be that day, and when you apply that checklist, it's going to backfill all those dates in your timeline accordingly, correct?
That is correct.
Cool.
So just like I did here, if I set this to something far in the future, like December 31st, maybe that's a go live date. Then what I can do is I can change my baseline task to be possibly brush my teeth, or if that is your go live task. The next thing we're going to do is choose Create Checklist. Okay, we get a notification that this checklist has been successfully created. That is how you apply a checklist to a location. Now, if you want to see that checklist that's been applied to that location, you can do that in two different ways. You can do it from the location record by clicking this down arrow and choosing Checklists. From this view, we're actually going to see many different checklists that's been applied just because we've used this one as a demo. But you can see the nightly routine that I just applied to this location. If you want to pull that up and see it, you can certainly click the hyperlink here, and that'll pull up the checklist. One thing to notice is the subject of this checklist has changed. What it does is it automatically applies the location and also the name of the checklist template together. The other way that you can pull up this checklist is by browsing back to your Project Planner module, clicking Checklists, and within this view of active checklists, you will now see the nightly routine that we just created. And like before, you can certainly hit this hyperlink and pull up that checklist.
Danny, can you show us, just scroll over and show us that Gantt chart?
Okay.
And one of the great things about this is that you can zoom in, you can zoom out if you have a bigger, longer project. There are some things like Danny didn't show this. It's one of those things that we would go through during a more in-depth training, but you have the opportunity to include or exclude weekends. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of look at this project. And now, see, you can see it right there. And it'll adjust the dates accordingly for your checklist, for your project timeline. But Danny, now we have our project, we have our checklist created and applied, and there are some things that we may want to do along the way because every project is going to be a little bit different. One of the things that we talked about a little bit previously was that there was a start and end date and a baseline start and end date. And I wanted to kind of pitch that question to Brian really quickly. What is the difference between a start date, end date, and baseline start and end date?
Right. So the baseline is, and Danny alluded to this earlier, but the baseline is kind of just the original expected start and end date for each task, right? So what it really lets you do, and then the start and end on the left side there, those are more like the actuals. So when you first create this, your baseline says this is what we expect this task to start and end. And then as those dates tend to shift, as they always do during a long project, you can see where did we go wrong? Where did this get delayed? Where did, yeah, there you go. See how the baseline start stayed the same. So what it really lets you do is say, all right, we thought we were going to be done with this by the 3rd, that first task, but now we're projecting the 15th. So that lets you later on, you can kind of compare where did we take too long. It's also possible to kind of aggregate this together and say, man, this one task is always taking way longer than expected. Are we doing something wrong, or is our template that we're working from for this project, is it just overly optimistic, and you really need to go back and adjust that so that we're starting with a more realistic timeline to begin with. So that's really what that is. As Danny said earlier, the baseline start and end date is what that task was set at when this was first created, and it never changes.
Danny, can you zoom back out to where you were just a moment ago? And you did something while Brian was giving that explanation, in that you changed the duration of the put on pajamas task, and it therefore changed the duration of the take a shower main task. Brian, that is because it's a main task and a subtask. So can you tell us a little bit more about what happens when you shift dates of main tasks and subtasks, and how all of that works with dependencies?
Yes. So the subtasks, basically you can have as many subtasks as you want, and their duration can be shorter, but they can't be longer, for example. So what'll happen is, and there, don't move it, don't touch anything. So this is a perfect example right there. So we switched the 3rd test, the brush teeth, to be a subtask. And if you notice, the main task now was extended out 2 days further. So what happens is, right, it was 17 days, and now it's 19. So what happens, your main task has to be, any subtasks have to fall within the start and end date of the main task. So if you start stretching one out, but you don't have to do that for the demo, but if you start doing that, you will see your main task will adjust. So you don't have like a main task that starts on the 1st and ends on the 10th, and then subtasks that are going 3 months later. That doesn't happen. It will always stretch the parent task to fit. And then other things are, you can't close the parent task if subtasks are still open. If they're all closed and you open one of the subtasks, the parent task will be reactivated, and things like that. So another thing that you can see there is there's a black bar on the right side, and that just indicates, that's just a visual cue that this is a parent task and that there are subtasks to this one. So that lets you see it, just there's a visual cue that shows you that.
Brian, I can have multiple dependencies too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You can do most things. I mean, you can't necessarily make your parent task dependent on a subtask that's already inside of it, below it, for example. But yeah, you can have many dependencies if you need them.
And we talked about before as well that when we have this idea of phased projects, that you might have several different phases that are going on at the same time. So those main tasks can overlap with each other as long as there's not a conflict in those dependencies.
That's right.
Okay. And then on the take a shower, Danny made that a milestone, and that's a start milestone. What is the difference between a start milestone and an end milestone, and what's the purpose of that?
Yes, the start and end milestones, all it really means is, as you saw when we were when Danny was messing with this a little bit earlier, was that sometimes with dependencies, you can have where you'll move one task and that'll cause another task to move. So if you indicate that the start or end date is a milestone, that those dates will not change through incidental actions like that. So you can still manually change it, but for example, you cannot do anything that end date that he just set there, that won't move by itself. You know, if you have dependencies pointing to that date, you have to move it by itself. So you have to directly say, I want to move this date, as opposed to it moving through, the length of earlier tasks changing and things like that. That won't happen. So it really just says, look, we absolutely have to hit this January 1st open date, and I don't care what happens, but we're not moving that, so that will not move accidentally. You have to make a conscious effort to change it yourself, and that's really all it's for. If that isn't applicable, then you can just not check them.
And that's true across the board with this tool, is that there are a lot of different features to this that we have designed to be available to all different kinds of franchisors across many different industries for people who are managing a variety of different kinds of projects. So if there is something here that you would like to see more of, if you would like to understand a little bit more of how to use certain features, please don't hesitate to contact us. We're going to leave it there with the milestones and this last little piece with Brian and Danny. I will make sure that everyone has my direct contact information after this webinar. If you haven't been upgraded to our value assurance program, or if you, like I said, are interested in subscribing to Project Planner 2.0, please do remember that this is going to be available to you through the end of the year at no cost for you to test. And if you want to talk about that, please just reach out to me. Training materials will be published on November 8th, so keep an eye out for that. Those will be located on our new and improved support website, and that can be accessed directly through your help center inside of FRM, along with many other new support guides and videos, including this webinar. I want to thank you once again for joining us today, and make sure to tune in 2 weeks for our next webinar. More information about the topic and the time for that will be forthcoming. I am Cassidy Ford, and we will see you next time.